So you can see why they kept moving from place to place. I mean, you know, that ain't much. It's no longer there. I'm told there's some kind of reconstruction there. I've never been to Columbia, so I'm not sure, but I'd like to go sometime. This is Old Independence Hall in Washington on the Brazos. It's where they signed the Declaration of Independence, and then where the government sat after Sam Houston pulled it out of Austin for a few years. This building no longer exists either. If you've ever been to Washington on the Brazos State Park, the building you see is a replica, built to look like what they thought it did. And what's interesting about going there, anybody ever been to that park? They've got all the streets laid out. There is nothing. There's this building, and then just a prairie. And Nancy Jones' house, I've not seen that, but it's somewhere on those grounds, but it's not actually in the town site. And that, you know, if things had played out differently, that could be Austin today. That prairie and an old historical marker, and Washington could be the metropolis that Austin is now. This is the Capitol in Houston that Thomas William Ward built. It was torn down many years ago. Anybody know what stands on that site now in Houston? Anybody from Houston?
Rice Hotel?
Close, the Rice Hotel. The Rice Hotel is there. There's Sam and Mirabeau. Mirabeau on the left, Sam on the right, wearing a tie that would choke a lesser man. Sam Houston was a snappy dresser. For his inauguration that took place in Austin, he had ordered through Count Séligny, the French charge d'affaires, a suit of green velvet. With a big green velvet hat and a big feathered plume. In between the time that he ordered this and the inauguration, he married Margaret, a younger woman who tamed him, supposedly, and I think she did, got him to stop drinking, and I think convinced him not to wear the suit. He did not wear it. If you're ever over at the Sam Houston Museum in Huntsville, they still have the hat, and it is a nice thing. This is Edwin Waller towards the end of his life. Probably close to 80 here. He was around in his late 30s when he built Austin. And he was, this picture, I mean, that is a tough looking guy. When he fought at the Battle of Velasco in 1832, he had a kerchief tied around his head. And there was a big knot here in the front where it was tied. And he was actually hit with a bullet right there in that thing. It didn't penetrate. It must have been kind of a spent musket bullet. But if you get shot in the head and get him walk away from that, you're a pretty tough dude. This is the very first published picture of Austin. It came out in a book that appeared in early 1840, so the city was less than a year old. And let's see, here's the river down here. This is Congress Avenue. Mirabeau Lamar shot his buffalo right about there. There's where the Capitol is now. This was the Capitol then. This big white building is Bullock's Hotel. And that's the presidential mansion of Mirabeau Lamar. And as you can see, there wasn't much to the town. The two main streets were Pecan, or 6th Street, and Congress. This was the road that led to Bastrop. Here's another view. This one was painted from that hilltop where the presidential mansion is, so you're looking towards the west. There's what they called back then, the mountains west of town. There's the Capitol right there. This is Congress here. And this has got to be 6th, because that was really the only street back then. I can't explain this bend right there. I'm not really sure why that's there. But then this has got to be 8th Street right there. That's Peg Leg. Later on, he became the consul to Panama. He had these pictures printed up and kind of a big calling card. And it's interesting, he was right-handed, and that arm got blown off. So by the time he signed that, he had to learn to write with his left hand. There was a whole series of these drawings that was made by a young girl named Julia Robertson. Her aunt was Julia Lee Sinks. Julia Lee Sinks was a young woman in Austin during 1840, 1839, all those times. Later she moved to LaGrange and wrote a lot of local histories there. And then towards the end of her life, she wrote a series of newspaper articles that were about life in early Austin. And then she described these buildings to her niece, who came up with these drawings. This is right on Congress Avenue here, and the building here is the General Land Office. So this is the one that Angelina blasted with the cannon, and the men were taking the records from. she is, firing her cannon. Have you seen this statue? It's aiming the wrong way. It's at about 6th and Congress on the west side of the street. And the land office would have been up here past the State Theater, up here somewhere. And somebody told me at a talk about a week ago that it's actually aiming at the city of Houston. This is where Kinney's Fort was, up on Brushy Creek. This is privately owned land. I won't tell you how I obtained these pictures, but I was able to sneak in there. I took these about 4 or 5 years ago. Years ago, this metal flag and flagpole were put here. There was a marker here that was put up by some school kids about 50, 60 years ago. And at the time that I went out there, there was going to be this big real estate development, this big subdivision called Kinney's Fort, or Fort Kinney or something, that was going to obliterate all this. And I'm now told, I haven't been back there since, I'm now told that there's a highway that runs right through here, and the marker and all that stuff is gone. And it just breaks my heart, because I think Round Rock, the city of Round Rock, really missed a golden opportunity here. This is not just some rinky-dink historic site. The Archives War really was of major importance to the way Texas developed, and they had, they were sitting on a gold mine in terms of historical tourism there, and they let it slip through their fingers, in my opinion. That is Anson Jones, the fellow we had to thank for getting government back to Austin. Sad thing about him is he became really depressed later in life. He was kind of a bitter guy. He wanted to be one of the first senators when he became a state, and he was disappointed in that. And then later, on the steps of the Capitol in Houston, shot and killed himself. There he is lowering the American flag, or lowering the Texas flag and raising the American flag at the ceremony in 1846 at the Capitol in Austin, in which we became a state. I think that's the last picture. Yep. Well, thank you all for coming. You do not necessarily have to leave now. There's lots of food and drink still. I'm going to be hanging around. I'm happy to sign books or answer questions. So have a good time.